welcome to Flooring Models. I'm Philip Flory. Review time. Kitty Hawk's new SA365S Dauphin II. Admittedly, this is one of those iconic helicopters that's been around a long time, and if you've ever been near one, you'll know they've got that distinctive sound with that enclosed tail and everything else like that. Kit-wise though, I can't think of anybody really who's come along and done them, so it's quite a nice Kitty Hawk have come in. Usual thing, we've got some nice box art, as you can see. Obviously it's a French helicopter, so all the markings are going to be French, I do believe. But as I say, we've got a couple of different ones there. We've got a rescue bird, and then obviously I think we've just got the standard marine one. And then looking around the old box, you can see we get a little bit of photo etch with it, some great decals we'll look at in a moment, and everything else. Very nicely done there. So you say your kit number is KH80108, and we'll have a look in the box. So up front, straight in, we'll have a look at the old instructions. So Kitty Hawk's usual way, you get a nice glossy outside paper inside. If I just move that camera out just a touch, there we go. So as I said, showing off the marine one down here in the combat markings off to start with. No doubt we'll get them on the back as well. Usual thing, we've got the call outs for where all the trees are and everything else, obviously pointing out. We've got decals for the instrument panel and a lot of photo etch as well. Okay, usual thing, in with the rotor states to start with. So we're working on the rotor head, putting all that detail in. Very nice colour call outs as you go all the way through as well in federal standard numbers. It's quite a nice touch. Okay, popping those all together. And then we're going in straight into the instrument panel onto the floor paste, a couple of bulkheads going in, all of that detail. We've got a photo etched instrument panel with a decal behind it. So you obviously paint your the back of the instrument panel, and that'll be the top combing as well of it. And then it'll be a case, they're saying, put the instrument panel down onto that, then the decal. I would have thought you'd put the decal down, then the instrument panel, but it just depends which way it's done. We'll have to look at that one. Okay, and then seats going in, we've got photo etch seat belts, fair enough, going in there. A couple of seats, they look a little bit comfy for this one. Okay, and then over the top bulkheads, and then bulkheads to the rear. Actually, it's a very strange way of doing it. I thought this was going to clamshell together and it would be like an internal, but it looks like it's going to be something different. Front bulkhead running right the way over, then your gear is going all on it, even before you put the floor on. Seems to be a strange way of doing this one, but we're just going to run with it. Right, okay, so all of this lot then fits down over the top, as you can see, right on over everything just down here, and then you're building up the sides. So I'm assuming there's a very strange way of putting this one together. I haven't seen one done this before. Okay, and then you've got the actual engine sets going into the holes. Looks to be a little bit small for the big hole, so you can do a little bit of wiring, detail work and everything else like that. Then you're putting the front part of the actual front of the aircraft on, top glass, then the actual system itself. The roof goes on afterwards. Okay, this actually is a weird way of doing it, because normally you get with a helicopter, you build the internal and normally you have two halves come around it and then it sandwiches it all in and away you go. This one looks like it's built up of individual panels all over it. So as I said, you're going to put the doors on, the glass work goes on, then the bigger doors on the side, or you can obviously have, I think, in a sort of different way of doing it, slid open. Panels go on the side and then on top. That's an incredibly complicated way of going together. Tails go together and then back into it. Okay, fair enough, we get all of that. Nose goes on, I can get that, then your doors go on. So you've actually built up everything out of tiny little bits instead of having fuselage sections. I would have thought that would have been photo etched, but it's not actually for the tail rope system, enclosed into that big tail that goes on the back. Okay, and then it's detailing up and that clips into the back of it. Crikey. Okay, you have more joins on this than anything. Back system goes on, the hoist is not the hoist, forget that, we're looking at it upside down. Okay, more detail work going underneath. Rotor head set goes on, right. Okay, and then you come in and detail more of the engine. So you've done the engine once and you're going to come in and do it again. Okay, and then you're really putting it all together. So you've got the second part of the rear part of the cabin goes on, which is on a slider as well. Yeah, it is an incredibly complicated way of putting it all together, but I'm sure there's reasons for this. I just can't fathom it out at the moment. Okay, there you've got the hoist goes on, torpedo set, torpedo goes on, and you're done. So, piece of cake. That looks to be an incredibly complicated way of going together. That's not a quick build. Okay, and then back out, you've got another marine one and a nice one in a camo set as well. So whichever way you want to do it. And then that is my little particular favourite, absolutely fantastic. So you've got this sort of sun sinking down here with this lovely colour scheme running right the way over it, which would be my one to do if I was to do it every time. Not that I'm dissing the kit, but that's an incredibly complicated way of doing it. Okay, clear parts off the top, so we'll look at those first. On the upside though, those clear parts are clearer than a clear thing on a clear day, because they are absolutely lovely. We've got no webbing at all. When we say webbing, it's just where they're moulded. Sometimes you get a cooler bit of plastic and then it comes in, and it looks like a tiny cobweb laying across it. This is absolutely crystal clear. We've got no distortion when you run this round at all. And I know they're flat, but they are slightly curved, so you'd think you get some sort of magnification in there. That's absolutely lovely. So no problem with all that clear stuff you've got to put in individually. Clear parts going in. I know, because people are asking me, my preferred way of doing it now is thinning this stuff micro crystal clear. You could use any PVA glue, but I do like the crystal clear stuff. If you thin it down and let the capillary action run to the edges, it will run off of anything that's flat. And then the biggest secret and the tip I can give you is to leave it completely, just forget about it for 24, 48 hours to let it go completely off. Then you can come in and mask up around it all afterwards. But if you try and do it too soon and it hasn't stuck properly, it's like a very weak PVA, but it does go very, very hard if you leave it. Funny old bags, food bags, I call them, with a staple, but whatever works. So we've got multi-parts in here. Again, this is one of those where it comes out of the factory in one, like this, and then to get them in a smaller box, they bend it. Okay, looking at it immediately, the first thing it grabs you is it's pretty chunky. We've got weapons on here, obviously not for this particular aircraft, so coming down the line I think you'll find it with other things. Okay, but certainly the gates seem to be very heavily moulded on. We've got sink marks in the actual sprue trees themselves. Okay, as you make your way along here, and everything else, just trying to see various details. The ejector pin marks are a bit flashy. You might need to clean them up to get them to all sit together, but down in here you might see they're a little bit flashy. And then working your way around, just all these smaller parts. A little bit of flash on everything, if we're honest, running all the way down here. No real seam lines on the small parts where it's moulded together, so those looks like they've come in well. Just these gates are very, very heavy. It seems to be the sort of Chinese way of doing it. They tend to have very heavy sprue gates on there. I'd say little bits of flash here, there and everywhere. You can probably see like down here on this part we're a little bit flashy, but it's not on the part itself, so you don't have to worry about it to clean up. Okay, so that's that one. Some of them are heat sealed, some of them are stapled. So again, looking at the detail, the panel lining a little bit soft. Looking at the trumpeter kit we just did a moment ago, if you're watching these in order, they're a lot sharper. These tend to be very softly moulded in here. A lot of the markings a little bit flashy. The bottoms of these doors where the rail fits in is a bit, well, it's all over the place. It's a little bit chunky. The riveting detail certainly isn't as sharp. None of it's as sharp. This is a lot more blocky. We've got some details down on the inside, but unfortunately you've got huge ejector pin marks absolutely everywhere with all of those, so you have to take care of that. Okay, some detail up on the front. And I have to say, I think, you know, as a reviewer and as a model builder professionally for the last 10 years, the one thing I do have to say doing all of these is that it's getting harder to review kits because they are all at such a level. So don't think I'm being picky when I'm pulling these apart. It's just that literally I'm so used to kits now being of a certain standard and them all being roughly the same that you almost expect them to be just like that. Okay, as I was sort of expecting this kit, we're getting different tails here. So I think there's going to be other kits coming down the line. So obviously you'll be picking out which tail you fancy. Okay, going right the way through again, The panel lining is either very, very sharp or it's very, very soft and then just fades off to nothing. But again, looking at all the parts, they seem to be all very nice and clearly moulded. A lot of the detail, the raised stuff's very nice. The seating is a little bit plain. You might want to liven that one up a little bit. But the riveting detail is all there. It's very softly done. Some of it's quite hard, some of it's quite soft. The differences in panelling, where they're doing different types of metal, things like that, work quite well. Generally, you've got nice because you've got hatch areas and hinges on the doors. These engines look a little bit crude, a little bit softly moulded. The top end up here, you might be able to see, this is obviously the switcher overhead switches, a little bit basic, nothing you would write home about. The seats, front seats, are something or nothing. I can imagine, and as I say, this is just my opinion and nobody else's, this kit will be a bit of a handful to go together. That's all I'm saying. It just looks clunky and big. Okay, so this is the main. If I can pull these apart. So what we have got though, we've got a nice checkerboard floor. Okay, very nicely detailed all the way through. Be great to dry brush that up. Working through underside of the actual belly of the beast, so to speak, of the helicopter. We've got some riveting detail, which seems to be very nice and fine. The detailing seems to all be pretty good. The little things like this exterior hatch back here, it's just so soft and horrible to look at. It's not a nice bit at all. Okay, so lots of these what I call ejector pin tabs, which will have to be removed and cut off. Okay, so you're going to have to take care of all that yourself, but again, the ejector pin marks are out of the way. The blades, you've got webbing all over them, but it doesn't affect the actual blade itself. They seem to be nice, cleanly moulded, no problem at all, no short shot runs or anything else. Tiny ejector pin mark. Okay, in those. The details running on the underside, at least the ejector pin marks are on the other side, so you won't see those at all. The gear, again, a little bit crude for its scale and in this day and age. Okay, instrument panel, this will be the centre panel, looks to be quite nice, no problem with that at all. Just drop this top camera down again. You can see it, looks to be quite nice detail. Okay, some of the details on the back, no problem. A lot of flash around these doors and that need a little bit of clean up. Okay, and right the way through. Generally, as I said, there's ejector pin tabs on everything. It's say these ejector pins in the doors are horrible. You're going to have to sand them out. Obviously, if you look through, you'll see them from the other side. If you're going to do anything, you've got the doors open, perhaps you won't have to. Okay. It seems to be, I don't know, overcomplicated and overdone. Okay, the decal sheet themselves, at least they're somewhat separate. As you can see, we've got this photo etch piece down here at the back with this instrument panel, which has no holes in it at all. So what you're going to have to do is stick this one over the top of that one. I thought it would have holes for the bezels, which would have been nicer to put that in. You get a steering wheel. No, you don't. There's obviously some type of trim wheel or something down there. And then we've got the decals, which seem to be very nice. Can't see any problem with those. No point really getting them all out of the bag. I can imagine this is a real handful of a kit to put together. It is certainly not straightforward. I know there's other manufacturers out there that have done Dolphins in different scales, things like that, that have done it a completely different way. Normally two fuselage halves come together. All of that paneling I think is going to be a bit of a nightmare. Certainly installing all of that glass work is going to be a nightmare. You know, and as I said, again, a little bit of something like your favourite PVA type glue thinned will help with a lot of that, but I imagine trying to get it all in there with no glue marks, no fingerprints, and certainly for masking it is going to be somewhat of a hassle. I think the gates are a little bit on the heavy side onto the sprue and everything else like that, and I know a lot of people have said but that's the only way you can do small parts. I don't know, you know, you look at the manufacturers seem to get away with it. Certainly if you look at Airfix these days, don't have massive gates like they used to. Revell don't do it, Trumpeter don't do it, obviously the big boys, Hasegawa, Tamiya, things like that, they don't do it. So I know the new guys coming along, obviously, you know, it's a relatively new company, Kitty Hawk, trying to bring out these kits to a certain level. It is a big uphill struggle for them to try and bring them out, but it's a very complicated kit to do. You know, if you're going to bring out a kit, I think you can probably bring out an easier one. But certainly, you know, from our point of view, if a kit not for the beginner, I think I'm going to say here. That would be my advice. If you're into your helicopters and you want to do a Dolphin, then knock yourself out. This is the kit for you. If you want a super detailed one, you could probably do a lot with this one because it's got lots of open panels, things like that. You could detail it up and obviously bring it up to your level of standard, that how you'd like to do it, and you'd end up with a great aircraft looking just like that as well. But I think for a newbie coming along who wants to have a go at the helicopter, I'd avoid this one like the plague because it is overcomplicated. Particularly I think with the glass work, things like that, and the way the paneling all goes in. To give you a nice straightforward build, I don't think this is going to be the helicopter for you. If you want more straightforward, I would look at other companies and things like that. So there we go, that's the Kitty Hawk Dauphin II.